Climate Change Global Innovation Hub. So as it has been mentioned several times in the session before, the focus of the Global Innovation Hub is on people. And subnational and cities are a key partner if we want to use innovation to serve people. So this session will focus on that aspect. So I will now give the floor to Dennis, who will moderate this panel.
Thank you very much, Masamba. And I have some good and some bad news. The bad news is that we live in a reality, and the Director General for the Swedish Energy Agency had another appointment. He was booked for the first 10 minutes, but as we run over time, he have business to do in the government. We have a new government in Sweden also. So unfortunately, he could not come, but he wanted to send his congratulations to the work, and that he sees that they want to focus on a 4-year time plan to make sure that things happens, because too little is done on the long-term horizon and too much is done on a 1-year basis. So he wanted to send his regards, and that they're going to continue to be a partner at least for the next 4 years. So I thought I'm going to just start a little bit to give a bit of a background. If you can switch to the presentation. Because when we met with ICLEI, we saw that so much was really coming from the same perspective, that we've been working in the same way for the last 30 years. And this expanded innovation agenda, when you move away from just looking at sectors to human needs and not just approach anyone as a source of emission, but also a source of a solution provider, the role of cities are so obvious. But so far, cities have basically only been approached as a source of emission. We've been asking cities to reduce their emissions. And of course they should do that. But cities and regions are where new ideas are born, where tomorrow's solutions are being born. So where are we in that conversation? And then we asked around. Most of the city initiatives are only mitigation focused, but ICLEI had this broader approach that it's actually well-being of the human beings living there that as at the core. And then of course climate needs to be solved within that context. So because if we look at the time horizon, I think this image is very telling that for the 90s, the focus was on the rich world and how we should reduce emissions a little bit. But now we need to focus on the whole world and how everyone can move out of poverty. And as Jeffrey Sachs said, that is really about avoiding emissions. It's not about reducing emissions from current systems. It's how we avoid as we allow people to move out of poverty and live flourishing lives. The second part that is equally important, if I can have the next slide, is that back in the 90s, we lived in a situation where we thought coal would be around for 200 years, where cars was the only way of model of transport. But now, when you look in a city, you have drones, you have 3D printers, you have local smart 15-minute cities where that is walkable. There's so many new solutions now that are focusing on how human needs can be met. So we really live in this opportunity where we need to have a global perspective, but also embrace all the solutions that are there. Next. So this is just to show that the two different perspectives of cities. You can look at cities, and you should look at cities as a source of emissions where we need to reduce those. But the next one slide is when you look at cities as a solution provider that meets human needs, not just the needs of those in that city, but helps bring up the solutions for everyone on the planet. And that's what we're really excited about, because a collaboration with a stakeholder like ICLEI that is really a global network really allows us to bring that to the table. And next slide. And I just wanted to, put next one as well. In '92, when we created this structure, when UNFCCC was created and all these things, none of these companies existed. The Amazon, the Netflix, the Google, the Wikipedia, the Teslas, the Uber, the Spotify, etc. And still today, we ask the big emitters to just reduce their emissions. We don't have a track in the climate community for the next solution providers. And if we would have the current solutions, the kind of agenda we have now, we would sit here today with fossil-free typewriters instead of word processing things. We would try to distribute CD records fossil-free instead of streaming music. So we would be so backward. So that's why we are so excited also that with this innovation agenda with ICLEI, we will open up for the next generation of entrepreneurs, and especially the next generation of those, the young ones who are going to build our society. So that's the last slide I had, just to try to give a bit of a context for where we are today and why we are so excited with this partnership with ICLEI that we think is really one of the most solution-orientated and human-orientated organization on this planet. Thank you very much. And I'll hand over to our Secretary General for ICLEI.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the warm introduction, first of all, and thank you to the UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub for hosting this session here that is indeed very timely. My name is Gino van Begen. I'm the Secretary General of ICLEI, Local Governments for Sustainability, and as you said, created indeed a little bit more than 30 years ago at the UN, in particularly to advance sustainability at the local level. So we work with around 2,500 cities on various agendas, various sustainability agendas, which we bring together in an integrated and coherent approach to address complex challenges that this world and the urban world is facing. We are, as ICLEI, the leading network focal point for the UNFCCC and work therefore also together with the parties, but also with the UNFCCC Secretariat to advance the positions, the solutions, the commitments that are being made at the local level in cities, towns, regions and states. We work indeed towards localizing all of those global agreements that have been approved since 30 years, including this, this convention, but also the Biodiversity Convention, the Desertification Agenda, Convention, sorry, the Urban Agenda, the SDGs, all of those that have been brought into life over these 30 years. As such, our global research and innovation strategy team stimulates and works with our members on research, on innovation in a collaborative way to address the sustainability challenges in cities and regions. And in doing so, to provide indeed via that research a very hands-on way of okay, yeah, thank you. Of implementation of the research and to bring together science with the implementers and in that sense cities in particular. We forge strategic alliances with international organizations, with global initiatives, with national governments, with the academia, financial institutions, civil society and the private sector to create that space for innovation and ideas to bring these together, as well as to operationalize ways to support sustainable development at urban and regional scale. This is also why we think that this partnership with Mission Innovation is an opportunity for us to align our agendas, our work, with the work that's been undertaken into Mission Innovation. And as you know, and you said it also, cities and regions are at the front line of these various crises that we are having today. Obviously, our headlines are full of the war, the energy crisis, inflation, high pricing, but climate change and climate change impacts continue to grow, as well as the biodiversity loss. And by doing that also poverty worldwide. So for cities, it is really important to tackle those challenges in a cross-cutting way, and not just from the perspective I am doing reducing my emissions here trying to solve a problem there, but to what basically local leaders are searching during their election period and what their mandate is to ensure a better quality of life for their citizens. Hopefully then they will also be re-elected. But that is basically the mandate of a local leader. So local leaders look at these various sectors in a very automatic, cross-cutting way to find solutions that address several of those challenges. And I think that is what we want to bring also into this partnership, to provide that support also and dialogue that we then from our side can bring it further to our members. Time is indeed very short. The Secretary General of the United Nations clearly said that the SDGs need to be rescued quickly. The IPCC report speaks of challenges to meet the 1.5 degrees. So all of that requires a rescuing effort as we speak today. I think that therefore again the innovation element and the expanded climate innovation agenda in particular is a good way for us to cooperate, to collaborate, to seek that creativity and the courage and the leadership to change things and to, in that way, perhaps also to help to rescue the various agreements that are at stake. So we are excited to announce here today officially that we are going to partner with Mission Innovation, that we are going to work together to develop further and implement the expanded climate innovation agenda, which is a powerful agenda that Mission Innovation, the UNFCCC, Global Innovation Hub and their partners have initiated under your leadership and the leadership of Massamba Doi. Thank you also for that. We believe that our in-house experts and our teams can indeed help support the further implementation of the expanded climate innovation agenda, and we can, from that partnership, bring the work further and back to our cities and members. So we are extremely excited to partner with Mission Innovation to work on the expanded climate innovation agenda, and we are sure that this partnership will help us to bring to the cities more result-oriented work and successes. Thank you very much for your attention, and once again, thank you for all the work that you have been doing. So, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think, I don't know who of you were at the former session, that was a little bit on the pessimistic side, that we have all these wars, etc., and we can't do very much. Nothing could be further from the truth if you talk with the people at ICLEI. And of course, in cities, people are still taking action. People still need to do, even whatever happens. Only the people working on very macroeconomic policy issues can say, oh, now I'm distracted. People need still to eat. They need the police. They need all these things in cities around the world, regardless what's happening. So that's where I think also the strength of working with people who are close to people, because it doesn't become so abstract. It becomes very practical. How do you actually implement these things in real life? And having people being re-elected. Because at the end, if we believe in democracy, we need to provide a positive wisdom for the future. It's not sacrificing themselves forward. So, but I'd also like to give the word to one of the thought leaders and people I've been mostly inspired by over the last few months here, Mr. Pourya, who's going to talk about a little bit of his thinking about this.
Thanks a lot, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone, ladies and gentlemen. You've been here. I'm so glad that Dennis and Gino managed to provide some food for thoughts, because this is a lunchtime, and you know, you're not going to grab your lunch, so this is fantastic. And also, a thank you to all colleagues for engaging virtually. So first of all, I want to thank UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub for hosting this timely session and having us all here. I arrived late morning at 4:30 sharp, you know, but I feel very energetic and energized to engage in this conversation because that's genuinely dear to my heart. I would like to start my intervention with highlighting the fact that the role of COP is changing. So let's do a quick recap. 2015, Paris Agreement was launched, and then the year after it was ratified, and last year the rule book was finalized in Glasgow. So now I believe this is a moment to move away from negotiations, because gratefully less has remained to discuss and negotiate internationally, but now we need to move forward heavily into implementation agenda. That's why it's time to dim up the light further in blue zones and looking into how best we can bring more stakeholders around the same table and do more together, do millions of relatively small things that could end up delivering an outcome of a decarbonized world. So on that note, I believe like implementation is now basically taking a lot of traction more and more. I had the pleasure of having Patricia Espinosa as a fellow passenger in my flight yesterday, and she shared her key takeaway after years of heading UNFCCC that like now it's the time to implement further. But hold on a moment, let's look into science. What science is suggesting us here is that we need to reduce the current emissions by 45% by 2030 to remain on track and keeping hopes alive to reduce the global warming rise to 1.5 degrees. Where we are today, combined all condition and unconditional NDCs, it's estimated that 5 to 10% only of the global emissions will be reduced by 2030. So if you ask me if we are in the right direction, I would say absolutely yes. But if you ask me if you're moving to the right direction, my answer would be we are crawling to the right direction. And in order to, shifting from crawling to moving and hopefully running to achieve what we have to achieve, we need to do things differently. We need to scale up our activities, and we need to look into the solutions that are being implemented, but we need to scale them up to the scale that is needed. So that's why I call it, a sort of a new version of COP. And I'm very hopeful to see this new version of COP start showing the signs in sharp and hopefully in the next years to come. And the reality is, one thing is also missing when it comes to implementation. And implementation takes place on the ground, and this means that we need to engage with cities and local governments, but not only as policymakers at the local level, but also as convener of different stakeholders. Oftentimes we fall into this loophole that like say, oh yeah, we gotta do this, we gotta commit to this, and we gotta reduce this, and we gotta like adapt to that. But like we forget that there are needs of humans who are living in those communities. And what is very exciting for us, and that's why that's the biggest buy-in for ICLEI to engage in this expanded climate innovation agenda that puts citizens' need at the core. It's like how best we can meet the humans' needs today and in the future, but also respond to the climate crisis. And then when you look into that, it's like, if you want to do like only for the population today, like the life expectancy at 2020 raised to its peak for countries like Japan at 85 years. So if you want to hypothetically put a pause on human reproduction, this means that we need this planet for 85 years. But is it actually the case? Obviously not. So we need to not only think about the communities today, but also think about 11 billion people who live on this planet in near future. And every action that we take today is going to have impacts for generations to come. And therefore, we need to look into the fact that like, okay, how we are going to provide flourishing lives while addressing the climate crisis. So it's like, yeah, like we need to look into them as the same challenge, right? And then the best is like looking into citizens as prosumers, as purely consumers, right? I think like one of the things is like we believe peoples and citizens are only like consuming what we produce, but that's not true. Nowadays, there are a lot of things happening at the very, very small scale globally that are actually generating a lot of impact out there. So Dennis didn't leave much for me talking about the expanded climate innovation agenda, but another angle that I would like to shed the light on that is existing systems. And oftentimes when we are talking about like, oh, how best we can address that is like thinking about optimizing the existing systems, the systems that were not originally designed to address climate crisis, right? So only limiting our mindset and thinking to, oh, how best I can optimize this existing system is not going to help us. It's destined to fail. We need to break away from this thinking, and we should really think how best we can deliver something that is meaningful for national level, for local level, for communities, for businesses. Just take the example of US economy. The government per year is generating $3 trillion a year, and the NGOs are generating $1 trillion. The business sector, however, is generating $20 trillion a year. 5 times more than the government and the NGOs combined. This means that now it's really the time to engage with private sector. We started this conversation back in 2009, and then we moved more and more. But like back then, not many of the global economy were actually committed to decarbonization. Today, 40% of the global economy cap has committed to decarbonization. So now we need innovative approaches to also making sure not only giving a voice and a chair, but also actually co-creating solutions with private sector hand in hand together. And last but not least, we really need to think that we have some limitations that we cannot move away from in terms of political structures, local leaders, national leaders come and go 4 years, 8 years, but the answers that we need is not limited to a 4 years time limit, right? So instead of champions-based approaches, we need to move into systems-based approaches so that no matter who is taking the lead in any levels of government in any geographical region, we all work around the same agenda towards something that we all collectively need to do. Millions of small things to create a better future for all of us. I'll put a pause here, but I would like to invite you all to come and connect with us and help us to drive and further develop this expanded climate innovation agenda for cities, for regions, but for people after all. Thank you.
Thank you very much. It's such a warming experience to do this and to find some passion and some real focus on what needs to be done instead of just the carbon accounting that I think is dominating. But I wanted to give 2 5-minute slots to just examples of the kind of exciting things that are happening on regional and city bases around the world. One from the global north in Sweden with a green transition leap, and one from India, the global south, with one of the most exciting incubators around on the planet that is really trying to provide the solutions for tomorrow. Just to give them 5 minutes a little bit on the kind of solutions agenda and very practical work that are actually going on already and that we hope will explode now and that we will try to facilitate through this partnership. So, Andreas, maybe first you, a short introduction, and then just a few. I think you have some slides that you might share, or are you going to just talk?
I skipped the slides, but thank you, Dennis, and good afternoon, everyone. To me, this Global Innovation Hub and the expanded innovation agenda and the launch of the partnership with ICLEI here today really marks the beginning of a new era. So I'm very grateful to getting the chance to participate and the chance to say a few words about the Green Transition Leap, which is one example on ripples on the water from the ongoing work. And it's of course an honor also to participate with such prominent panelists. I work at RISE, which is one of the largest research institutes in Europe, and I have for many years been remotely involved in the work with Mission Innovation and Energimyndigheten and UNFCCC regarding the net zero compatibility initiative and the expanded climate innovation agenda. And it's really satisfying to see the progress. So thank you all for great work. And I also have high hopes for the outcome of the launch together with ICLEI. I truly do believe that cities and regions together with SMEs will be frontrunners of the new era. And a few words on the new era and the expanded innovation agenda. I believe that business must deliver not only and not primarily on wealth, but also on well-being within planetary boundaries. And today we try to make business sustainable, but what is needed is business that brings sustainability. And this calls for a shift in mindset and focus, which includes that we need to look through the front window more often than we look in the rearview mirror. Or in other words, we need to put more emphasis on what business delivers than on its footprint. And as we know, today's front runners are often big polluters that can reduce their emissions significantly. But we also need a new type of front runners that are enablers and providers of new solutions without huge emissions. Enablers such as cities and regions, and providers of new solutions, which often is found at SMEs. a recently launched initiative that tries to focus on SMEs and cities and regions is this program, the Green Transition Leap. It's an outcome of the ongoing work. It uses derived tools and methods from the expanded innovation agenda and the Net Zero Compatibility Initiative. And it aims to make it easier for SMEs to make sure that their business is for sustainability. So the program includes easy access to new findings and to new solutions, and includes awareness raising activities and inspiration and coaching activities. And it aims to reach several thousand companies per year. And we seek by this to raise each company's perceiving of future business and to lower the threshold to start their transition. And a most crucial key in this work is to have cities and regions that requires new solutions and accelerate new solutions. Right now we are elaborating different processes for cities and regions to better include SMEs and new solutions in their strategies and their plans. So coming to my concluding points, this program, the Green Transition Leap, is just one example, one showcase that perhaps might serve as some inspiration. And I believe that we will see many more to come from the launch of this partnership here today and the support for expanding innovation agenda in regions and cities. Thank you, Masamba, Dennis, Smita, ICLEI, and all involved for great work so far and great work to come. I'm really looking forward to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Andreas. And with that, I'd like to hand over to one of my personal heroes, Smita in India, who's been doing a fantastic work of a human-driven agenda with entrepreneurs and really looking at the private-public partnership. And maybe I can tease that we're going to do a launch tomorrow with a challenge for all the world's cities and regions to help their incubators to quantify and be part of the solution agenda. But over to you, Smita, to talk a little bit about the excellent work you're doing and the role of cities and regions to actually help the kind of institutions that you represent.
Thank you, Dennis. Thank you for having me here, but also thank you for the very generous introduction and being a champion of the work we're doing in India. So very quick introduction. I represent Social Alpha, which is a multi-stage innovation, curation, and venture development platform based out of India. What we've done is that we've built a full stack architecture to enable early stage innovators and entrepreneurs working on some of the most critical areas, which is climate, livelihoods, health, and even more critical aspect is their intersection. So one of the elements of this full stack architecture is an international incubator called the Clean Energy International Incubation Center, which acts at the early stages of this funnel and is recognized under Mission Innovation as one of the Mission Innovation International soft landing platforms. So we fundamentally believe in three things. One, that the climate innovations agenda needs to be expanded and inclusive. It needs to include everyone. We are here with the kind of growth and development we've seen. It's because the story was always heavily skewed. And let's acknowledge that the disproportionate burden was borne by those who were least responsible for where we are at with respect to climate change right now. And therefore, we cannot afford to make the same mistake again. And human needs and net zero goals need to operate in sync from now on. The second belief, very strong, is that of power of innovation and entrepreneurship to solve for these complex problems, because in many cases, these have been historically under-addressed or suboptimally addressed. And therefore, existing solutions, it's understood, will not work alone. When we talk about innovation, we'd go a step further and say we need market-creating innovations, because these are innovations that actually do not have a ready-made market yet. Therefore, we need mission-driven entrepreneurs who are balancing between looking at it as a profitable venture, but also solving for these very, very impactful problem statements. And therefore, there's a need, and we strongly believe that the third thing is there's a need for prioritizing. With limited resources and very limited time on our hands, there's a need to prioritize, one, on the basis of the greenhouse gas avoidance potential, so along the lines of compatibility with our net zero goals, but also to include what is called co-benefits. Talk about issues around access, around basic quality of life, around food security, livelihoods, etc. So not just from an adaptation lens, right? So, while we focus on mitigation, carbon capture, and adaptation, the human-centric agenda needs to be as much a part of mitigation goals as it needs to be a part of, the adaptation goals. So with that belief, what we do is we work with early-stage entrepreneurs, like I said. We've created this multi-tier ecosystem that addresses this expanded climate innovations need, provides lab-to-market solution to early-stage startup, which includes early-stage R&D, testing validation support, de-risking, market access, diffusion and scale, and funding, most importantly, a funding continuum that supports all of this. Very interested to hear about the role of cities that has been highlighted here. We work with multiple stakeholders, not just cities and local governments, but also the national government and the state governments, private sector, industry leaders, civil society, grassroots organizations, and both in rural and urban ecosystems. Because what we believe is that this entire innovation ecosystem needs to come closer to the entrepreneurs for them to deliver. We've been plugging some of these, market failures in the sector with our very, very driven impact thesis. And like I said, so far with more than 30 investments in this space, including mitigation, adaptation, capture, and including areas in industrial decarbonization, energy, circularity, climate resilient agriculture, we've now come to a stage where we understand and we're seeing this evidence of investing in early stage innovation and early stage entrepreneurs. In fact, we thank the RISE Institute and the Net Zero Compatible Innovations Framework because they're also helping us create the evidence when we talk about solutions for the future. So they've estimated that 20 of our supported startups have demonstrated a collective potential of avoiding more than 200 megatons of GHG emissions per year starting 2030. And that's a good evidence for us to keep going and supporting similar mission-driven entrepreneurs. So I'd pause here, but I must say that we cannot let our dream of net zero become a zero-sum game where we go back to the same problem where we're leaving a bunch of our stakeholders and critical actors behind. Thank you.
Thank you, Smita. And I don't know if you heard what she actually said there. They have already put out there entrepreneurs with the potential to reduce emissions with smart solutions with 200 million tons. That's for Sweden. One incubator in India. And we sometimes talk about education, and it's usually about the doom and gloom. You need to understand this. These kind of entrepreneurs, they're ambassadors for hope, for the need to address these challenges. So it's also not just a technical question that people were talking about earlier. These are human beings. These are flesh and bones in cities and regions around the world whose passion it is to deliver what is needed for the planet. And so far, how many of those have you seen on the big stage? How many of those do we still cover in the news magazines? It's usually the big polluters saying, oh, we commit to do something in a couple of decades, we hope, if we get big government money. But these people are currently in cities and regions around the world delivering all these exciting things. And that's what we hope, and we're going to do this tomorrow also, say, what if we bring all the cities and regions with that message also, saying we are committing to reducing and creating the markets, but here are all the solutions. So, and that's why the Global Innovation Hub and under Masamba's leads has said, we want to be that platform where that can invite those. So where this partnership with ICLEI moves on, we have the opportunity to bring all these exciting things and say to the mayors, it's not just about your commitment to reduction. Bring your staff, bring your communities, bring your young entrepreneurs to this and show that there is hope. So that's why I'm really excited about this partnership also, because for me, it's one of these places where you find true hope. And you find it on a rational basis. It's not just something wishy-washy. These people live and breathe today with these solutions, and they're not being acknowledged. So as we start a little bit late, we need to wrap up a little bit, but I'd like to, if you have some last reflections from our fantastic partners at ICLEI, just rounding up the session.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think that we're all here now in Sharm el-Sheikh, and the world watches, of course, what is going to come out from here. Local leaders are, I would say, have the benefit of being a little bit outside of these kind of large negotiations. It has some cons, and one of our tasks and mandates also is to help them to understand what actually is being discussed here and what are the agreements, but more importantly, what will it mean for them? Because once nations get out of this here, the commitments are not ambitious enough, but there are commitments on the table, but ultimately this has to be implemented, and the implementation takes place at the local level. As it was said before, half of the population, world population, live in urban areas. This is also, of course, where the major part of the emissions occur, but the solutions are also there. And I think local leaders are, and that's their benefit of being not, blocked into these kind of discussions, but they look at what can they do and what must they do at home. And it is within that spectrum that we see really progress at the local level, and we are very happy to see how many of those cities are indeed trying from a sustainability perspective to create better conditions of life for their citizens. And that includes obviously climate change and curbing emissions, but it's within a larger perspective. And I think that we, at least from where I stand, or where we stand, we see many very good examples occurring in these last 30 years. So yes, there is hope. There's a lot that still has to be done, but I think that also with this partnership we can shine a light on those good examples, like we also heard here from the private sector. So I do see light in that tunnel.
Thanks so much, and Dennis, but also our esteemed fellow panelists. I guess from my perspective, Gino wrapped it up very nicely, and one of the things that is very heartwarming is we have the support from our highest level of our organization in terms of how important it is to look into innovative approaches. And that's now like a mandate, and that's basically the basis for this partnership. So this expanded climate innovation agenda for us is very valuable from three perspectives and angles as well. The first is like we are appreciating, acknowledging, and empowering cities and regions under this context. Second point is we are looking into the offerings that a fourth industrial revolution is handing today, and we want to harness that momentum and benefit from that in the context of an expanded climate innovation agenda. But last, I would say the most important point is like this expanded climate innovation agenda is aimed at helping cities, particularly in Global South, to move up in the value chain and turn to become exporters of solutions. And if you wonder, like that might be really, far off thinking, I would say no. Like just take the example of informal economies, that it was not really a problem in Global North, but nowadays, because of the population growth that Gino referred to, is becoming a problem in the Global North. And they are looking to Global South's experience in the past to tackle this challenge. So for all these reasons, I guess I personally believe that this partnership is of strategic value for us with Mission Innovation and UNFCCC Global Innovation Hub, and we look very forward to the next year to building upon this agenda that Mosamba and Dennis together led so far, and we would love to see how best we can implement that on the ground. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll just want to end saying that we're soon going to launch a platform where you can start to, together with you, and see, can we assess the kind of strategies if they are human needs based and if they are solution based, and you see how can we help build that capacity, because we need to move away from the sector problem only to that. So that's what we're going to do here. It's built on IPCC work, and just try to see how do we move forward, because we need new data. We need new tools to guide us in this way, because the kind of offsetting tools, the kind of reporting tools that I've done so far, they're great for reducing emissions in existing systems. They're not so good in encouraging and delivering the new solutions. So for a city, how does a system look like when they start to measuring their positive impact from the kind of solutions that we heard from the panelists on exporting those solutions? There's no real framework there. So that's the kind of things we want to experiment with and say, how do we encourage this to really accelerate and move forward? So with this, I'd like to end this session and thank you for listening in to one of the most exciting launches for this COP, I hope.